So late last year, I made a few videos talking about Everything is Fine, and it caught my attention. It was something I wanted to recommend to all of you guys because it was different from what I would normally recommend. Because if you know anything I recommend, normally it's fantasy stories, something to do with, let's say, a isekai being transported to another world, or a power fantasy, something like that. That's usually the type of videos I make when it comes to webtoon stuff I seek and recommend to all of you guys. But sometimes there's some things that really stand out to me that I feel like more people should give attention to and potentially start. Like, for instance, Shotgun Boy I did a video on a while back, to also Your Throne recently, and now I'm going to be talking about Everything is Fine once again. Now, I'm going to be talking about the entirety of Season 1, or at least kind of give a brief recap and summary of Season 1, talk a little bit about Season 2 that just started for Everything is Fine, but don't worry, that'll be later on in the video, so don't worry about spoilers for that. But the thing is if you are interested in this series, and like you have no idea what it's about, etc., and you don't want to be spoiled, I will already have a link down in the description you can check out for yourself, and also you can read the entire series completely free and legal on Webtoon, so don't worry about that. What is Everything is Fine, and is it something that you might be interested in? So as you could probably see by the title, Everything is Fine is definitely misleading, because everything is not fine. The entire premise of the series is actually very unique, and it's a nice contrast with the visuals to what's actually going on within the story. So the general impression you get if you were to just look at, let's say, the art of the story and not know anything about it, like if you were just to go into the series blind, or you're watching this video for the first time about Everything is Fine and you have no idea what it really is about, you're gonna look at it and be like, so it's like animal-headed people and it looks cutesy. That's probably what impression you would get when you first look at the artwork. But in reality, there is so much more going on within this story that really needs to be talked about. For one, obviously, very early on within Season 1 of Everything is Fine, you have this very ominous tone, this very off-putting tone, and there's a lot of visuals that happen that shows that even though our characters are acting like everything's a-okay, they're talking to each other, they're doing their pleasantries, etc., there's something darker going on behind the scenes, like they're being watched, monitored, or they're not able to say what they want. And as Season 1 slowly ramps up and progresses, you find out that they definitely are in some form of dystopian world. Now, we don't necessarily know what year and date it is, but it's very clear that something has happened within the entirety of the world, which has led to humanity pretty much having to put on these weird masks and having to just hold their tongue and not being able to say how they really feel. They have to put on this entire act, even with their close loved ones. They can't really break down and cry, etc., and be sad. They have to act like the title suggests, everything is fine. So it's a very cool series because you're always on edge wondering what is going on. You're always guessing, like, why is it like this? Who's the ones controlling it? Is this a simulation? Is this an alien world? Is this the real world but in the future where, maybe a corporation is controlling things? It makes you wonder what's really going on within this world. And there's many possibilities and directions that the story can still take, even with the end of Season 1. So let's list all the things that happen within Season 1 and get the general premise out of the way. So basically, you have our main characters, Maggie and Sam, that are our two main characters, basically the husband and wife, and you find out that they definitely have a child. However, their child isn't in the picture for a very obvious reason. The reason for that is because their child apparently has been taken by whoever is the main authority in this world. Now, we don't know necessarily why the children are taken. You can probably take an easy guess and say the children were taken for the sheer fact of just having leverage on people, but then it makes you wonder if everyone within this society also have children, every single individual one, and they're being held hostage because of that, or is there something else that get used against people? It makes you really wonder. But whatever the case may be, our two main characters, Maggie and Sam, are basically trapped, and if they get out of line, if they lose their status, whatever happens, basically their child, what they care about, will die. And so because of that, they have to act like everything is fine. So throughout the first season, you see neighbors around our main characters, basically acting like everything's normal, putting on the charade, etc., like playing house pretty much, and eventually things start to happen to where the neighbors of Maggie and Sam start to mess with things. They start to, cause problems for our main characters and kind of set them up to where, they could potentially get red status, because basically, our main characters meet this character called Charlie. And Charlie, very early on, seems to be an outcast within the neighborhood. He's by himself, but he lets in on a little secret that if you have, like, aluminum and you kind of encase your room in it, you can be able to have a secret conversation or area that you cannot be tracked on. So, basically, to clarify this, everything about the daily lives of our characters is monitored. They're not able to do anything that they want to do. They're not able to interact with others, say what they want, etc., have any problems. And so if they were, they would be, noticed by the authorities or whoever's in power, and then, they would probably be, gone, executed, or the child, is probably executed, whatever the case may be. Something like that happens. And so Charlie found out a way to be able to stop people listening in. If you line a room with aluminum and you get in it, they can't monitor you. Obviously, if you do this for a long period of time, it could be very suspicious, and it could definitely lead to a lot of attention, and so obviously that's where the authorities or the police get involved within the story. You have a police officer that comes over, finds out what Charlie is doing, and obviously it makes Maggie and Sam look really bad because they are associated with him, and then they get, suspicion thrown at them. Eventually, things heat up. You find out that basically the neighbors of Maggie and Sam were the ones that turned in Charlie to be able to up their status, to be able to move into a better area and place, basically move up in society by sacrificing their own neighbor, and eventually they try to throw, our main characters under the bus as well. Well, eventually, the only option available to the two main characters is literally to throw their neighbors under the bus, because they're already doing it to them. What else can they do? So they pin the death of a police officer on their neighbors that turned against them first, and then straight up, they were able to move into high-class society. So basically, what this kind of paints is that the very premise of the world of Everything is Fine is about doing anything you can for survival, to be able to survive and continue moving up in society and throwing anyone under the bus to be able to save your own skin. That's basically what the first season of Everything is Fine tried to paint. And that obviously there's a lot going on in terms of the food situation, whatever's going on with the population, why there's cookie cutter houses, all of them look the same. There's a lot of strange things. Like, the final chapters of season 1 of Everything is Fine shows us that the town that Maggie and Sam was in was going to be burnt down to the ground. They were basically next. And a bunch of cities and blocks that are basically identical were burnt completely to the ground. And it's not really told to us why this is a thing. It can mean a variety of things. Like, if this is a far distant dystopian future, it could basically mean maybe population control, for all we know. Maybe that has something to do with why the children of these individuals are taken. But once again, it doesn't really make you, it doesn't let you know if everybody has a child taken, or if it's just a loved one. What if someone doesn't have a loved one and, are they able to be controlled? It makes you wonder. And then there's a lot of questions about the helmet as well. Like, we've seen with the helmet that it has, this weird brain matter inside of it, and we don't know what that is. So for all we know, the helmet could actually be an organism of some kind. We don't really know, basically, with the conclusion of Season 1, but there is a lot of theories and guesses you can get, and I really like the mystery and intrigue of what Everything is Fine is about. It's a horror series, that's exactly what it is, and it's a dystopian horror series that always makes you wonder what direction it's going to go. Now, there's a few things I do want to talk about. With the conclusion of Season 1, it definitely opened the door up for what you could expect from Season 2. The final chapter basically has our main characters moving into Lakeview, a new area that is this remote location in the wilderness, pretty much near a lake. And we meet the mayor of this Lakeview area, and the mayor was the wife of the now deceased police officer, which you can already see how that's going to lead to trouble, since technically our two characters, Sam and Maggie, are the reason why the police officer is dead. So we already have potentially our main villain for Season 2, but we also have maybe a big concept of what Season 2 is going to be about. Because you see a few times throughout the final chapter where our characters, like, you know, the police officer that took them to Lakeview, has this weird, like, badge on them that's a smiley face. And then you see another person that has two smiley faces. And it implies that, you know, you need this either for status or something else. And you can only assume that there is probably something opposite, basically a frowny face if there is a smiley face. Now I'm going to get into some Season 2 type content. So with Season 2's release, we do get some answers to this, you know, question. The smiley faces and frowny faces are actually a thing, and the smiley faces means something you do good. For instance, if you're doing well in society, and if you, let's say, get enough of them, you'll probably be able to move up in status. But if you get too many of them, you get demoted. Basically, you probably go back to where you once were, and you probably will be incinerated. So everything about what we got within, you know, Season 1 was just a precursor to the next stage. And the more and more I look at the way Season 2 is now going, it looks like you're just in a higher status with a more at stakes game, a riskier game than how it was the first time around. And so I feel like at this point in time that no matter how far you go up, you're just playing something that's of higher stakes, more to lose and all that, because anyone that gets in that area obviously has done whatever they can to be able to survive. So that is some food for thought. So yeah, overall, everything is fine. How do I feel about it? It's good. I really love it. I made quite a few videos on it already, as you know, and I think that this series is definitely worth checking out if you are interested in a dystopian-like story. Now, once again, I want to remind everybody, if you are interested in reading this series, there is a link down in the description. So click on that link, and you can be able to read the entirety of Season 1 and the start of Season 2 that just literally started legally for free. So, once again, if you want to read it, go for it, click on it, down in the description below. But with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and if you enjoyed this video, you know, please leave me a like. It does help me out a lot with the algorithm and everything, but be safe, everyone. Chibi out.